So, a fresh new week has arrived, and here on this channel, that means one thing and one thing only. Every week, I post an episode of this series we do called Your Take Not Mine, where I turn to you, the viewers, to give me your hottest NBA takes of the week, based on what's going on at the time, and I then choose my favorite submissions and discuss them in a video. This week, the NBA draft went down, uniting the next generation of young talent with their new teams. Plus, free agency just began as well, so we definitely have plenty to discuss. In order to submit your takes, I make a community post on either the day of or the day before the video, similar to the one that you see on your screen now. So if you want a chance to be featured in a future episode, be sure to stay on the lookout for that. Plus, channel members get their submissions for the series included in the video guaranteed, so consider that as an option as well. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Haz, and he says that Ace Bailey is going to be the next Cam Reddish, as a player that has flashed a lot of potential, but can't put it together at the NBA level. Knowing what we know now about Cam Reddish and how his career will pan out, this sounds pretty harsh on the surface, but if we go back to the 2019 NBA draft, Reddish was one of the most highly regarded prospects in the entire class, by a lot of people. He went to Duke as a top 3 recruit in his high school class to play alongside Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett. All of his peers in that class of 2019 spoke highly of him, with Anthony Edwards, for example, saying that Reddish was one of the best scorers he's ever played against, and that natural bucket-getting mindset was supposed to be a big-time weapon as a pro. But the mental side of the game ended up being a huge reason why Reddish has not panned out, and if you see where I'm going with this, then you'll realize there are definitely some similarities between him and Ace Bailey. Reddish struggled molding his game into a reduced role and wasn't quite talented enough for NBA teams to justify making him a lead option on offense. For him to maximize his career, he was going to need to lock in on defense, utilize his offensive strengths more off the ball, and start doing the little things that get coaches to trust you, and that part of his game just never clicked with him. It also didn't help that his three-point shot wasn't quite efficient enough to truly become a threatening 3-and-D guy, as a career 32% shooter from deep, and all of that has resulted in him going from being viewed as a potential star to now likely being forced to sign a minimum contract just to stick around. Ace Bailey's game is very similar in that he is a score-first player by nature who has a natural ability to make tough shots look easy, and when he gets the ball, he pretty much always looks for a way to get a shot off, but he hasn't shown nearly enough willingness to adjust to other parts of his game. He rarely passes the ball, he struggles to create separation off the dribble, and he was only a mediocre three-point shooter in college, so in the NBA, if he's coming in expecting to be the star of the show, he may get humbled quickly. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if he ends up being a player that can put up 20 points per game, and I by no means expect him to flop nearly as hard as Cam Reddish did, but in order for him to actually be an impactful scorer, he's going to need to work on the mental side of the game and improve his overall poor shot selection and decision making. The next take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Jay, and he says that the Orlando Magic will never be able to make a deep playoff run with both Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner because neither are good shooters, and because of that, one should be traded. The Orlando Magic are one of the NBA's most promising young teams, with a core built around a dominant defensive unit that just smothers opposing teams and brings back some old school scoring nights reminiscent of the mid-2000s NBA basketball. Defense does win championships, as we just saw with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who had the league's #1 ranked defense this year, winning it all. But you can't simultaneously have one of the worst offenses in the league like the Magic do. Paolo and Franz are both fantastic young budding stars, and in the NBA, 2 stars is always better than 1. But in this case, the original take does have a bit of a point. in that Paolo and Franz are pretty similar for better and for worse. Paolo is obviously a lot bigger and stronger, but both players have more of a slashing type of game at their best as downhill drivers that attack the basket and are more comfortable in the mid-range than they are from three. They're both highly skilled off the dribble, can score in the post, and pose as mismatches for smaller defenders, but they are literally both 32% career shooters from three, and Franz in particular has gotten worse over time, having just shot 28% and then 29% from three in each of the last 2 seasons. The cold hard truth is that it is very hard to have a highly powered offense if your 2 best scorers actively hurt your team's spacing. The Magic were ranked dead last in 3-point shooting this season, and it's not a coincidence why. I'm not trying to pin all of their problems on Paolo and Franz partnership, because in general, most of their team's rotation lacks 3-point shooting as well, and the fact that the team doesn't have a real playmaker at point guard to set those guys up certainly doesn't help either, but ultimately, I think I do agree with the original take here. Paolo Banchero is locked in as the face of the Magic, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if, in a year or two, the Magic came to the realization that it's better to ship Franz out to try to find a better pairing that addresses what the team actually needs. Having just acquired Desmond Bane definitely helps too, as he's a lights-out shooter, 20-point per game score, and his shooting will definitely give them a nice boost, but with how valuable Franz is, being in the prime of his career, they could probably find an incredible return for him on the open market that actually bolsters their area of weaknesses in a big way. And finally, the last take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Evan, and he says that he doesn't think Cooper Flagg will live up to the hype and won't be an all-star player that most expect him to be. Flagg was the clear-cut top prospect in this year's draft for a lot of reasons, but nothing is ever set in stone until these guys prove it on an NBA court. There is no such thing as a sure thing, but there are sometimes guys that are pretty damn close to it, like Victor Wembanyama was a few years ago. Is Flagg on that level? I wouldn't quite say he's there, but he's close. I think I understand why some, like the original poster of this take, think what they do about Flagg, because he's not necessarily the kind of player locked into scoring 25 points per game, like all of the biggest stars in the game today, but there are more ways to becoming an all-star than just that. I see Flagg as a future all-star in the similar way that Jalen Williams of the Oklahoma City Thunder was an all-star this year. Williams isn't necessarily someone that would thrive as a number 1 option on offense, but he's an elite number 2 who provides incredible versatility on both ends of the floor, is one of the best defenders in the league, and smartly picks his spots and efficiently converts when the opportunities come to him. Williams put up 22 points per game this year, while making the all-defense team, and that's the kind of production I think Flagg can realistically hit. Flagg is an unbelievable competitor on the defensive end who has a nose for generating turnovers, swiping passes, snagging deflections, and blocking shots as the help man in the paint, and in transition, he is a force to be reckoned with. His handle is useful enough to get into the paint, and he finishes strong through contact around the rim, plus he spaces the floor well as a spot-up shooter, hitting 39% of his threes in college this year, and even though he may not be an elite creator as a scoring talent, he's good enough to keep defenses on their toes. If you're expecting Flagg to be the best player in the NBA, you probably need to temper your expectations a little bit, but he should absolutely end up being an all-star talent that makes a few all-defenses in his prime too. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the takes discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.